Okay, assalamu alaikum. Just have a patience, just about 2-3 minutes, okay? Don't be hurry. Okay, we are here and I'm just waiting for the rest of the students. And that, okay? So don't be hurry, okay? Okay, let me start with this. This is actually unit number 2. See if I have it recording that, yes. So this unit is all about cybersecurity cube. Okay, here we have seen all of the topics that we are going to study. We will go for to see the 3 dimensions of cybersecurity cube. Then we will study about the principles like confidentiality, cybersecurity principles. Then we will see also the states of the data, types of cybersecurity measures. Then I'll also look for the ISO cybersecurity model. So these are the main topics that we will discuss in this unit. And the same I have written down in form of pictures: cybersecurity cube, CIA triad. These are the CIA triads: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Again, then states of the data, cybersecurity countermeasures, and IT security management framework. Let's look at this first of all. Here it is. There it is, cybersecurity cube. So let's look at the 3 dimension of the cybersecurity cube. Okay, if you look at this first of all, okay, is there a thing? We will be patient. It's not about all, it's about you. Okay, it's not about all were not in a hurry. Okay, I'm here. This is just 4 and 1 4. This is just a 1 minute up, and you were in a hurry about asking about the sound. Okay, nobody was there in a hurry except you. Okay, now there is a principle of security. First of all, let's look at this. The first dimension, if you look at this, make it bigger for you. Okay. The principles of security is all about to identify how we can protect the cyber world. Okay, so this is actually a foundation, provides you a foundational principle for the cybersecurity world. Okay, we talked about those principles. What are those principles to which we can protect the cyber world? This is about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Okay, so this is all those principles that everybody like cybersecurity specialist will have to follow and will apply on for the security of the organizations. So we can also call these principles as CIA. So C means confidentiality, the first name, the first letter for this, integrity I here, and A for the availability. Okay. So we also call it a CIA triad as well. Okay. If you look at the CIA triad, let me tell you what is this first of all. So CIA triad provides a very simple and complete checklist for evaluating an organization's security. Okay. Because an effective IT security system consists of majorly 3 parts, we can say. So what are those parts? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So we can also call it a CIA triad. Okay, so TIA triad, we can also call it a framework. It's not about principles, it's all about a framework. It's also about to a kind of a checklist. So if it is a high level framework for the cybersecurity professionals, so what is it for? We use it for the security purposes. Deeply, we can say it's for auditing, for implementing and improving system security. Okay, so it is a powerful way just to identify weak points and form solutions to strengthen policies and programs. So that's actually the whole story for that CIA triad. Okay, So I hope you get the concept of CIA triad, the principles of security. Okay, that's all written here. The first dimension of cybersecurity cube identifies the goal to protect the cyber world. Okay, I also told you the same thing, that it is actually a complete framework. It is a checklist, complete checklist to evaluate an organization's security. So if you want to get to know the effectiveness of IT security systems, you have to go for 3 parts. You make sure applying these parts with the help of these principles. What are those principles? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So hence we also can call it a CIA triad. Okay, so let's look at these one by one. Okay. Okay, this is also a powerful way through which we can also identify weak points. Okay, through which we can then form a solution to strengthen policies and then the weaknesses of the system. Okay, so if you look at the confidentiality, first of all, let me tell you, we have to know each and everything. I want you to know about, first of all, the first dimension. I will tell you the details of these CIA triad, these terms in detail, right after introducing you the 3 dimensions first. Okay, so the second dimension is the state of data. I mean, you know, the data is very, very important for any organization. Okay, so that data in different states. So you might have the data at rest or in a storage form, or you might have data in transit, or you might have the data that's being processed. Okay, so these are all these. This is the second dimension where you see the states of data. Okay, let's look at this, the cybersecurity safeguard. This is the third dimension in which we actually get to know how to protect these and safeguard these cybersecurity word. Okay, so we secure these cybersecurity word using technologies, using policies and practices and people. So if it is technologies, if we can use also some kind of firewall, firewalls. I mean, the firewalls might be hardware or some kind of software. We can use also some kind of antivirus softwares, okay, to protect an information system and to protect the system from the cyber criminals. We can also apply the policies and practices, guidelines through which we can help our citizens to get to know about the cyber world and to keep them safe from those kind of bad practices. The third one, people, if it is all about, we can help them to get knowledgeable about the word and the threats related to that word. Okay, and we can make them aware about these threats and dangers and their word. Okay, so all these things will help to get to know to safeguard the cybersecurity word. If you look at that cube, on one side we have a information states, that is a processing state, data in storage and transition. And then other side we have countermeasures, technologies, policy and practices and people. And there is a security principle, availability, integrity, and confidentiality. Okay, so you have to just get to know about how many dimensions for the cybersecurity work cube. So these are 3 dimensions. Okay, let's see this CIA triad. So which is the CIA triad? The first dimension is the very, very first dimension here. That's confidential, integrity, and availability. Okay, let's talk about each of these terms one by one. Okay, let's look at the first one, that's called confidentiality. I will give you also then examples for this. Then I'll read the text for you to get to know what is written here in these slides. Okay, I don't know where she's asking to say. I mean, look, for some of the girls who does not who don't who have some problem with the sound, they should fix their own computer, okay? Otherwise, that's on my side, that's all right here. So let's look at the first one, that's called confidentiality. So confidentiality means simply protect sensitive data, which is a sensitive data that is private, from whom we have to save from unauthorized access. Okay, so it means that we need to protect information from bad actors that has malicious intent, as well as we have to limitize access to only authorized individual within the organization. This is confidentiality. Okay, so if somebody asks you about this, you could think about it as a privacy, like your data is private. You never allow anybody to get to know about your confidential information about your life. That's the confident, that's your private information. So you never, it's a sensitive information. You never want anyone to get to know about, for example, your disease, your some of the personal matters. That's all your private. So you never want anybody to, I mean, for example, if you're going to the hospital, their hospital has your all of the details and log. You never have anybody, I mean, never ever you let anybody to see all of the detail except the one who is authorized for it to get to know about your disease, and then can prescribe you some of the medicines. This is just an example. Okay, so confidentiality, we can say, involves protecting sensitive data private and safe from unauthorized access. So it means that it includes protecting information from the bad actors with malicious content, as well as to limitize access to only authorized individuals within an organization. Like, for example, we have an example for the students. The students never want their parents to get to know about their grades. So the teacher can only see the grades. I mean, if not for all, but for my students even in a university. So look, for the rest of the students, I don't know exactly the details. Even their parents cannot, and even the people who are working in the university cannot see the details of you people. So it's you and the one who is responsible for is get authorized for to see all of your confidential information. So that's why we can also, you could think about the confidentiality private. Okay, let me give you another example. Whenever you send an email, for example, you are directing the contents of your email to a specific person or a group of people. Okay, the protection in place that keep your email private. I mean, to make it measures like to apply the confidentiality. So how you can apply a password, you can apply a locks, or you can also apply some kind of tokens. This kind of measures you can apply to ensure the confidentiality of your email or if your messages. Okay, I mean, if this is actually confidentiality is all about it. Okay. Okay, let me tell you more about the confidentiality. If still got an idea, is not with me, not get an idea about the confidentiality. Let me give you another example. Like, for example, an organization's data, an organization like for university or hospital or educational institutions, for all others, they should the data of that organization should only be available to those who need it. Okay, access to the data such as human resource files, medical records, school transcript should be limited and should only be accessed by the relevant persons. Okay, so what is it for? Because we want to prevent security breaches. So confidentiality policies must be followed. To access is limited only to the authorized users. Data you can classify the data, you can label it, you can encrypt the data to allow restrictions. And the IT team can also implement multi-factor authentication system like it's in Google. Okay, so anybody can get to know about your password, but whenever he tries to log in, through your computer or some other devices, you ask for a second factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. They might send you a kind of a password through which that you might verify you. They verify you the authenticity of the person. Then they can access your inbox of the Gmail. And the same way in the banks, the finance team are in every organization. There is a finance department, there is a sales department, marketing department. So the finance team in an organization should be able to get an access of your bank accounts, because they needs to know about your debts, your income, and all other details. But most other employees and executives should not have an access to that information. Okay. So what to do? I mean, if it is a hard copy, but if it is in hard form, so some security measures may apply, like you can lock cabinets to limit access to the physical files. And you can, if it is in a digital form, you encrypt the digital files, protect information from hackers. So this is a second very simple example. Understand? So that is very easy to get to know about what confidentiality is all about. Okay, so how we can make sure the confidentiality using different methods. What are those methods? We can apply encryption, we can apply authentication, you can apply an access control. So, okay, so if somebody don't know about these kind of methods, I will tell them what actually encryption is. Okay, what is actually encryption? What is an authentication? And another one, what's the last one? It is access control. Okay, so if you look at the encryption is a form of data security where you convert your data into a ciphertext. I mean, that data is not in its original form. It's not readable. Okay, you change the form of data, and you change the form is called a ciphertext. So that, okay, so only unauthorized people who has a key to decipher it, because whenever we encode something, we use a key to encode it, and you can also use the same key to decode it. For example, if I will give you something, so I need to encode it, I will apply something, a formula with a key and something with the kind of arithmetics. So I will encode it. You cannot read that information unless you use the same key to decode it, to get to know what is inside the message. Okay, so the information that's in the real form, it's called plain text information, and the decoded information is called the ciphertext. Okay, so we can simply say encryption is a way to render data unreachable to an unauthorized party. That is how you can apply the confidentiality. This is a method through which you ensure the confidentiality. Okay, then look at the authentication. Authentication is a process to identify a user. Okay, like for Windows, whenever you are using, I mean, if I am in the university, so I need to get login to the network of the university. So it means that what is it for? Because they need to identify, they need my identification. So they need to make sure that I am the right user coming inside the network. Okay, so authentication is a process of identifying a user, and we grant access, get an access to the network. Okay, so most of the times we get authorized, how we get authenticated, how? By using a password and a username. These are the credentials we normally use to get authenticated. Okay, so there are many other methods through which you can get authenticated, like kind of passwordless authentication, and like for example biometrics eye scans, fingerprint. Okay, just like you people can also apply a security on your mobile phone through the biometrics and fingerprints, like some kind of tokens or some kind of smart cards as well. These are all being considered as considered authentication methods. Okay, so authentication is a technique through which you make sure that confidentiality of the data and the networks as a information system, the whole as a whole. Okay, so access control means to what things you are permitted to do and what you don't. Okay, like for example, me, if I get an access, I know about all the students. I can see your grades. I can change your grades. I can make modify it, but you are not going to get unauthorized to change information of yours even. Okay. Okay, so in this case, in the case of university, when we get logged into the network using password and username, the server evaluates the credentials. It means that there is there is a machine who helps to verify or authenticate our credentials that is submitted by the user. Okay, that kind of credentials like username and password is stored somewhere, already stored somewhere. So where it is stored, that's called Active Directory. So Active Directory is used as a database for many enterprises to store and analyze those credentials. So it means that there is an Active Directory and server that is being managed by the university. So they have all other information. So whenever we need to get logged into their network, we use a password and the username. That's kind of an authentication. And access control is mean what things you are allowed to see and what you are allowed to get modify any information. This is something like this. Okay, this is okay. Let me read the stuff first of all. Confidentiality prevents the disclosure of information to unauthorized people, resources, processes, and the term for the community is privacy. So I think I have already told you in a very simple way what is written here. Organizations need to train employees about the best practices in safeguarding sensitive information to protect themselves from organization from the attacks. Okay, so which method we normally use to ensure confidentiality? We use that encryption, authentication, and access controls. Look at this, organization collect a large amount of data, and much of this data is not sensitive because it is publicly available, like names, telephone numbers. That's all Kano worries for about this data. But other data collected through a sensitive information is data protected from unauthorized access to safeguard the individual from an organization. I have given you an example for the hospital, for the student management system, where you have student records and their information as well. And for the companies, you and me are all there. Whoever's information also means a value to some of the organizations, because they use some business intelligence tools to get the information, to use that information. Okay, so these kind of examples for the confidentiality. Okay, so here we have the third one. We have an access control. If we are talking about the access control, we need to know about AAA. Okay, so what is AAA? The AAA is authentication, authorization, and accounting. Okay, where is that? Okay, so here it is: authentication, authorization, and accounting. Okay, so whenever you need to make sure the controlling access, you apply the controlling access through different security services: authentication, authorization, and accounting. Okay, so authentication, as I already told you, this authentication means is a process of identifying a user and granting them access to the network. Okay. Okay, so this is, I have already told you. Let's talk about authorization. So right after authentication, you get authorized. Okay, so it means you apply some kind of restrictions or user privileges. It means that access control. Okay, so access controls mean which data he needs to get access and which needs to make it private for it's not be seen, not be shown to that person. Okay, so this way you know that which data should be authorized to get access by whom. This is called authorization. Okay. For example, here, for example, if I get logged into my network, I can't see the salaries of everyone. Okay, I can't. So if I'm working in a company in a sales department, I don't know about the other departments. I'm not authorized to get access like for the marketing, for sales, for finance. I don't know what's happening in that department, and I should not have any I should not be authorized to use that information. Okay, so that is an example of authorization. Then we have an accounting. So what does it mean? Accounting is simple way. Is it this? It's an accounting just to record all of your actions that is being performed by any of the user. Okay. Okay. So why we do that one? We collect information. We try to maintain a log of all the user sessions. So, for example, when did I get logged into the network? So, what I was doing within that network. So, what resources I have used for each of the websites. For example, in the university, when I get logged in, when I open some of the web pages, that web page is being recorded. The system itself being maintain a kind of a log where he's recording each action. So which websites, wherever I click, where I make changes. So whenever I need to make a kind of a change to make effects on the system, I'm not authorized it for. Okay, so this kind of accounting helps in both security and operation evaluation as well. Okay, so network administrators can look at user access privileges to specific resources to see about the changes. So they are being whenever you are part of this, you're being monitored. So whenever you're being monitored through their logs, through their records, through their sessions, that they develop such a system through which, so it means that this is how they're applying the security measures. So you get authenticated, but then you get authorized for, and whenever you're using the system, you're accountable for each of your action that is being performed on the network. Okay, so this is actually very simple explanation of all these controlling access terms services. Okay, let's read that text now. Verify the identity of the user to prevent unauthorized access. That's simple as authentication. If you look for authorization, services determine whether resources user can access along with the operations that user can perform. Okay, so this is determine which resources it can access. That's about an authorization. Okay, if we look for the keep track of what users do, that's all about counting. Okay, let me see inside Bismillah. Okay, so let me continue down. I hope you get the concept of all these things again. So that's about the confidentiality here. Confidentiality and privacy seems interchangeable. As I told you that sometimes we also call it as a duplicate name. Okay, you could think of confidentiality, privacy, but for legal standpoint, they mean different things. How is it different? Okay, most private data is confidential, but not all confidential data is private. Access to the confidential information occurs after confirming proper authorization. Financial institutions, hospitals, medical records, professional law firms, business handle confidential information. Okay, what does it mean that privacy is confidential? That's all confidential, but we should have to, by any means, somebody is going to use that confidential information. So that's not mean that it is confidential for all these cases. Okay, but not all that confidential is private. That's why we call this kind of statement. Here it is has given you examples. It's not all cases that confidential information should always be private. Okay. Understand? So confidential information has non-public status, maintaining confidentiality more than ethical. This is, I mean, look, for example, for all these doctors in the hospital that are working, I mean, they may have an access to your all of your history of your disease. They may not have. They may have yours, but they should have keep it confidential. That actually they are using your private data, but it is their ethical duty not to share it with anyone and to keep it more and just to ensure the confidentiality of the data. That is what actually the mean is for. Okay, for the for organizations and customers and employees, they should also be careful about not to expose the confidential information of the organization. Okay, principles of data integrity. Okay, integrity is the accuracy, we consider that integrity, accuracy, consistency, and trustworthiness of data. Okay, so another term is equality. We call anything. Okay, let's talk about now the integrity. That confidentially is holla. That's it. Now we should have to talk about integrity. That is the second of principles of data, okay, cybersecurity principles. The first dimension that we already discussed. So do we have some principles? So cybersecurity principles. What are those principles? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Okay, the confidentiality we already know about it very well, and we know how to apply it, and we know about how to apply it. I mean, we also discuss about some of the examples regarding that, ensuring that confidentiality of data. Okay, individually for the organizations as well. Okay, let's talk about now for the integrity. Okay, as I already told you that the integrity is make sure the data that is being accessed is in the real form. Okay, so whenever I'm saying maintaining data integrity, it means that making sure that all people the data belongs to should be into the original form. Okay. Okay, so the system with integrity keeps data safe from unnecessary changes. Okay, that changes might occur because of some malicious or accidental. Okay, so making sure that our integrity is all about making sure the data is into original form. That's not has been changed. Okay, so let me give you an example here. For example, let's talk about the email. For example, if you send an email to anyone, you assume that the information that arrives to the recipient, if that information were altered along the way, say for example, a third party intercepted the email and changed some of the key points, the data has lost its integrity. It means that that is not into its original form when somebody has changed. Okay, so if you want, if let me give you another example. For example, in an organization, because that's all about the organization's security. Okay, so organizations should only be available. Organizations' data should only be available to those who need it. Okay, so access to the data, such as, for example, for a human resource file, medical records, the same as the school transcript, should be limitized. Okay, so what we do that we have to make sure to prevent security breaches, confidence. So we make sure that nobody is going to change that information. So we apply security access controls, and we make sure that the access controls and the rules and policies and practices that we apply to that user is not able to change that information because he may not compromise the integrity of the data. So that's one of the example. Or you can see also normally in schools as well. So schools do what? They typically protect grades database so students cannot change them, but teachers can. Okay, so in this case, a student hacker might bypass the intrusion detection system and alter some logs to mask the attack. Okay, that's in that case, he might compromise on the system, the system compromised. So for example, if I lost my username and password and some other students might use it and change its grade. So that's a big compromise of on the system, and it can compromise on the integrity of the data. That's in that case, it's very important to get to know, to apply the certain integrity on the information system. If I'm talking about the information, it's all about the student management system, hospital data, and all other organization for them, the sales, marketing, finance. These are all the organization. So the scope is something very simple here. It is that we just have to make sure that data is in its real form. It's not being changed by anyone. So how we can apply these integrity? We apply through hashing. We apply data validation checks. We apply through data consistency checks. We apply also data access controls. Just like in confidentially, we apply the access control. Here we are also applying, but here we are also applying it. We're applying a hashing as well. And there we apply encryption. Here we are applying a hashing. So what is hashing? Hashing is just another technique, just like encryption. So hashing is a security technique that converts your data into something alternate, unique identifiers called hashes. Okay, but encryption, we can decipher it. We can decode it. Whenever we are encoding it, we can decode. But in hashing is one way. Once we make a hash of that information, we cannot unhash it. Okay. So this way we make sure the integrity of the information. Okay. The encryption is used to secure data from the reach of the third parties. They both look same, but they are dissimilar from each other. Hashing emphasizes the integrity of the information, while encryption focus on the confidentiality of the data. Okay, so this is, you should have to know very well about this. There are some validation checks. I mean, validation checks we can apply through whenever we apply hashing. We can also apply some data validation checks and data consistency checks. Okay, and access controls. Okay, let's talk about now this one. A need for data integrity varies based on how they use data. For example, Facebook does not verify data that the user posts, and they don't need to. That's why, I mean, many of us have their duplicate profiles. There was no any check of the data integrity. That's why they don't verify that. And for example, let's look for the bank or financial organizations assign a higher importance, they also integrity than the Facebook does. Okay, so transaction and customer accounts must be accurate. I mean, that's not important. Might be that's Facebook never apply checks for the data's integrity. Make sure the data integrity. So that's why somebody else may also have the same profile, just to copy some of the pictures and can make it another profile. But the banks and financial organizations, where there is data very important, they just apply that integrity techniques. Okay, so they just to make sure that the transaction and the customer accounts right in their original format. Okay, so okay, so I mean these kind of financial, like banks, can they afford to change someone else's information? They never can have this kind of hacks or attacks that can be that into their system. So the security checks. This is the integrity should always be applied, and practices should always apply to these financial, especially on the financial organizations. For example, here in the university, nobody should have an access to the customers, I mean, to the students' data, to the teachers and to the staff members. They may change the data. So changing data means they are compromising on the integrity of the data. That's why here we need to apply these kind of principles, the integrity principles. Okay, so here they have given you an example here. Okay, the last one is all about availability. So data availability is all about making sure the data is available. Okay, so right after applying the confidentiality, integrity, okay, so data should also be available. Okay, I mean, even with access controls, but making sure that the data is available to the right people, and it is always available whenever, wherever you are. Okay, that's very simple definition for the availability. Okay. So every organization, that's like in say in the hospital and another organization where you're working in, they have their employees. So that employees should have an access to the specific data. I mean, their own data, even if with the permission, they should have an access to the relevant data. Okay, so these are whenever you're making sure the integrity and confidential data, you also make sure the security framework must include the availability as well. Understand? For example, like for me, if I give you a very simple example of the availability for bank details, I can always in 24/7 I can access my details. So bank details, my financial records, my credit debits. Okay. So this is okay. So look at this. What kind of threats that might be associated with availability? You know about the denial of service attacks, DOS, I told you, and ransomware. Look, I told you about these kind of attacks. So there might be this kind of attacks on your data. So if there is a kind of denial of service attacks, mean that you actually compromise the availability of your resource. If it is ransomware, means the data that is available on your system is going to be reshaped. It's not available in the right format. So to maintain data availability, organization can use redundant networks. Redundant networks means that's not only one system, but they can make a copy of that systems. If it is a server, like for example, Steam might have information all of you, but they may have a redundant data, means they have another servers where the same information is being available on. If one server machine is having a problem, it's under attack, so you can also go for another duplicate form of information. Okay, the servers that are programmed to become available whenever the default system breaks and gets tampered with. So you can go directly, they can be forwarded, the traffic can be converted to those machines. But in that case, updating and upgrading systems on regular basis, on make sure you're updating and upgrading your system on the regular basis, because in that way, whenever there is an infiltration, some kind of malfunctions, so that might your duplicate or the redundant resource should be available to make sure enhance or to make sure the data availability. That's all about the availability here. Okay, how you can make sure the equipment maintenance, you can also go for the system updates. So make sure the system updated, the redundant system especially. And you can also have a backup as well. You should you should also have a disaster plan. You can also new technologies for the establishment of the redundant systems, monitor usual activities. You should have to keep monitor if there is something going on, keep working on to the primary system. If there is something unusual happens, you first try to to cope that infiltration or attack, and test the verify availability. So always you have to make sure whenever you're going to make sure the availability of system, making sure that you're updating, you are having a backup of the system, you should have a disaster plan, something like this. Okay, so high availability system typically includes three design principles. Eliminate single point failure. What does it mean, eliminate single point of failure? What does it mean? It means that if you have only one system where all of your data resides there. What does it mean? So it's quite very risky to have this kind of only one point where all other users are connected. So if it is at risk, it means that you lose your point, you lose your resource. So it means that in that way, it's quite risky. Okay. So whenever you design such a system, you configure a system, or you implement a security system. So you should not have this kind of system where you have a flaw. What flaw? Whenever there is a potential risk that might disturb the whole system. So you should essentially making sure that there is not a potential risk associated with your system. I mean, you may not know about the system. So whenever you're designing something, you should have to make sure that there is nothing, any flaw and failure into the system, and the system can be compromised. Okay, so compromised, well, what just malfunction with one malfunction, and the fault might be the system fault. It might be there's a malfunction, it's kind of a malicious activity, can disturb the whole system. Okay, understand? So making sure that whenever you're designing, there is nothing about a single point of failure. Okay, you must have to provide a reliable crossover, detect failure as they occur. So whenever there is a kind of an occur, you might have to detect it, keep connected with the system. And whenever there is a kind of failure, you should be able to transfer that control to another system that is working as a redundant system. And that's called reliable crossover. Okay, here you go. We have an activity where we have to make sure, and this is cybersecurity safeguards, and we have these terms. Let me write it down if I have that one here. Bismillah. Okay, oh, here we go. Okay, we have an hashing files and data structures. I mean, to which clause it belongs to. Redundancy, I told you about the redundancy, what I mean. Encryption, eliminate single point of failure, identification, authentication, passwords, data backups, biometrics. I told you about each and everything, okay. Now, let's look at you. I should have to ask about these, okay. For example, for hashing files and data structures, do we apply to make sure what? Do we make sure the confidentiality by hashing files, or we make sure the integrity, availability, or confidentiality? So, okay, so I don't know. Okay, which one? Let's see the answer here. Confidentiality. Okay, well, okay, Wafa. Availability, it's about to make available the resource. So hashing is nothing about a resource. Okay, so better is you answer these questions next week. So next week, okay, first read your contents in the right way. Okay, then you will be able to get to know about these things well. Okay, so better is to take time. We are about to, next week we will complete this chapter. You might get a better idea about this. Okay, so for each of that safeguard, I will give you an argument. So whenever Wafa, she said it's about availability. So let me ask her, why is it for availability? Hashing files. Okay, do you have any argument that it belongs to the availability? I make sure it's availability. Okay, you should have an argument as well. So better is to discuss. We will discuss these things. Next week I will not record this. I will record the rest of the chapters, the states of data, and the rest of the contents. Next week, right before a lecture, we will discuss this activity. Okay, I hope you will listen to that stuff in the right way and try to get to know about this. Okay, so everything is quite clearly written in these slides. So better to read the stuff and try to get to know about the real terms that belongs to. Okay, so which principle belongs to redundancy, encryption, a limited single point of view, password, okay, biometrics. Okay, let's say here, yes, okay, that's good for you. Okay, so till then,